Hey the berries, today's video is sponsored by the Professor app. Professor is a free application that you can download and it will help you increase your win rates in your Soda Q games. I've been using this application on my streams and in my gameplay recently, and I've definitely noticed a huge difference, as you can see with my win ratios on the Diamond 1 account. It allows you to import builds really easily, so if you're unsure on the runes that your champion should be taking, you can import builds at the click of a button. When you're going into loading screen, you can see the tags of all the enemy players and your own team, so you can see what lanes that might struggle and what lanes might, do quite well and you might need to take a little bit more care about. You can also see like win ratios of champions and play rates, so you can get a strong idea of how good someone is going to be at a champion. Professor also has tracking stats as you're playing the game, so it allows you to track your vision score per minute, kill participation, and if you are playing a filthy AD carry, it allows you to track CSing and other factors like that. At the end of the game, you can see extensive post-game analysis, so you can see where you went wrong and where you did well. And it allows you to compare yourself to other people in your ELO, so you can focus on areas where you think you might be weak and solidify those areas that you're strong, and that should help you climb in ELO. If you're interested in downloading the Professor app, there is a link down below, and don't forget it's free, so you've got nothing to lose. Enjoy the video. Hey the berries, welcome to another support guide for 2022 season 12. As you may have already known, if you clicked on the video, you should know it's a Senna support guide. I've been doing pretty well with Senna support this season. In fact, I think right now she's one of my highest win rates across all the champions on my accounts. So she's been doing really well recently, and she doesn't look like she's going to be changed or nerfed anytime soon. So now is the perfect time to look into playing Senna if you want to. A couple of situations where you might want to pick Senna is like if you're playing with like an AP carry bot lane, like with a Karthus, a Ziggs or something like that would be perfect, because Senna is a ranged AD carry essentially, but tuned into a support kind of role. She's a very unique champion in this aspect, and she's one of a couple of champions in the bot lane that item-wise as well builds completely differently into lethality. But don't worry, this guide will cover everything from runes, into items, into skill order, into how to use your abilities. It's going to be an in-depth one, and it should give you the absolute core on how to take this, and then do a couple of normals, and then take it into ranked, and do really well with. So you can see on the screen, these are the runes that I love taking with Senna. This is what's been working out for me incredibly well, and I highly recommend them. I don't think anything here is necessarily flexible apart from the coup de grace or grace, coup de grace, is it coup de grace? On the bottom rune here, if you are up against more tanky teams, you can opt into going into the cut down, because then you'll be doing more damage to tankier opponents, and Senna's base HP isn't particularly high either. If you're not sure, just stick with the coup. That will generally prove pretty well and effective during the majority of the game. So fleet work at 100 stacks, when you hit something at that, you get a little burst of movement speed, plus you get a tiny bit of health regeneration. This amount is increased when you are doing it on enemy champions, as doing it on minions is not quite as effective. Presence of Mind gives you that mana regeneration to stay into the lane, and generally you're going to be harassing a lot during this laning phase, which we'll get into the ability section very soon. Attack speed, Senna doesn't have the greatest attack speed ratio just with how a kit works, but it is noticeable when you do pick up a little bit. That's why some people might not suggest to take the attack speed, but it just feels more fluid in her auto attack animations that she has it. So a clarity here, and then we also have the attack speed from those stat runes. We've already talked about coup de grace, and then we're going to go into inspiration. So Senna has a natural slow in her kit, which will work with the approach velocity. We'll get into that a little bit later. And biscuits is just another way to stay in the laning phase as long as possible, because you're going to want to harass a lot. Adapt to force on the second stat rune, and then defense, you can take either the armor or magic resistance depending on what you're up against. Now we're going to go into a practice tour where we're going to look at summoners and everything else that I just mentioned. So let's go ahead and do that. Let us take Senna. So Senna is on the summoner runes, we're going to be going heal and flash. If your AD carry is already running heal, then you will want to take either Exhaust or Barrier. Taking Ignite on Senna is relatively pointless because she has a massive auto attack range, particularly as we go throughout the game, and you will basically be treating her as an AD carry. Now let's talk about Senna's abilities. The main thing in her kit revolves around her souls, so we'll talk about that first. It's her passive. So Senna generates souls two ways. She either picks up souls by right clicking them, or she can hit a champion twice. There is a slight cooldown to that, but if she hits a champion twice, not only does she deal bonus damage to them, but she also will generate a soul. So it could be any damaging two auto attacks. It could be like an ability, so you could do one auto attack, one ability, two abilities, two auto attacks. You get the gist. Just do 2 damage instances to a champion. Now every time you generate 20 souls, Senna's auto attack range increases, and this can technically be infinite. So the longer the game goes on, the more souls you'll generate, and the longer her attack range is. Which is one of the reasons why we don't really want to bother running Ignite, because we'll be way too far away from most of the targets that we want to apply it to. Every time Senna generates a soul, she gains auto attack damage, or attack damage, and she will also buff her ultimate, which is a damage and shield component, and it will buff the shield. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. Also, on top of that, every time she generates 20 souls, we mentioned that her attack range increases, but she also gets either critical strike chance or lifesteal. So she, at the current patch that we're currently on, it is 10% crit chance per 20 souls. If you in whatsoever way hit over the 100% crit cap, which is from souls or from items, that excess crit chance will be converted into lifesteal. Lifesteal is okay and all, but we're not really too focused or interested in that, but it's a nice little way to not make crit completely useless on Senna. Also, when you auto attack, you also get a small burst of movement speed as well, so it works quite nicely with the fleet work that we were using in our runes and talked about earlier. So Senna's ability Q is the first ability that you'll be maxing on her. It is a line projectile attack on a target that you have to use this on a target. It can be a structure as well, so it can be a turret, it can be an allied champion, it can be an enemy champion. You cannot use this ability on yourself. So this ability does 2 things. So in the middle is the damage component. So there's, you can see there's one well, it's not the bright blue line, it's like slightly wider than that. So that is the damage component, and the outer edges are a heal component. Now the heal component is also in the middle, so the entirety of all the bar is all heal, and only the middle bit is the damage component. So you can heal every time you use this ability, Senna will automatically heal herself. She also will heal any allies, allied champions that get hit by this. So you're shooting your allies to heal them. And also you are damaging enemies and slowing them, and applying one of those shadow debuffs that we were talking about earlier, the soul debuff. So if we were to do another auto attack or a damaging ability there, we would get 1 soul. There's a lot going on with this ability. Another little trick that you can do with this is that we talked about structures and enemy champions, but she can also use this on wards. So it's really nice if you are trying to catch someone that is getting away, but you don't have a target to queue to. So being able to do that and then slow them down by 20% at the start, and that scales as you gain more attack damage. It really prevents them from getting away and helps you catch up with your approach velocity, so you can really hunt people down that way. Also, don't forget you've got the fleet work as well, so that also will proc off your Q, and that applies on hit effects. So, brief rundown of what is going to be happening in laning phase. A general combo will be auto attack Q. This will generate you 1 soul, But the reason why we do auto attack into a Q is because it will reset the auto attack. Because if we do it like this, if we start off with Q and then do auto attack, the animation of the 2 damage instance is going to be really slow. So if we do Q and then do auto attack, it's generally going to be quite slow. Whereas if we do auto attack Q, it just comes off just a little bit faster. A little bit. So in basically during the laning phase, you're going to be wanting to, you know, come out high, try and get brush control, coming out of the brush, quickly doing a quick poke. The enemy's slowed. You got topped up if you did take a little bit of poke, and you get to run away with your increased movement speed. So a lot of the laning phase is just hit and run. And just to overwhelm you just a little bit more, Senna's Q can also pick up souls on the ground. So if you can see some souls that are on the ground and quite far away, like there's 1 or 2, and you won't be able to auto attack to pick them up, what you can do is you can Q a minion to pick them up, or if you're feeling a bit fancy, you can put a ward down, snipe across the lane, and pick up those valuable souls that you need. So the real point of Senna is that you really want to just generate that 20 souls as quickly as possible, because it's like a little bit of a snowball effect where if you get 20 souls, your attack range is increased, so it makes it easier to harass the enemy to get another 20, and then another 20, and then another 20. So really the first 20, 40, 60 stacks in a game is really important, not just because you're getting the extra attack damage and all the other things that these souls are giving you, but the attack range is like the most valuable thing on Senna, especially when playing it as a DPS. Senna's second ability is her W. Now her W is like a line projectile. It can get blocked by minions, but it would hit the first target for damage. And then that circle you see will root the target and anyone in that circle. The root portion does not do damage. Let's show it off again. W. Target's rooted, anyone around it also gets rooted. So once again, you can kind of use this in a combo where you do a Q poke at range. So say if we use this ward here to harass this target dummy, fire out the W, and we've gained another soul doing that, and we didn't even have to get into auto attack range. Now a little tip with this W, which is a really advanced tool, and you may not have to use it or even think of using it until very early on, but if the target you kill with this dies, it will instantly do this root animation. So if you're getting tower dove and you can see like a melee minion is on like really low health, it could be worth Wing the melee minion, because then the root will instantly happen. Because if you are just Wing a champion naturally like this, they can still move around for a little bit until that root animation kicks in. So little tip there that might become useful eventually in one of your games. Next we're going to talk about Senna's E. It's her main escape tool slash being really crafty tool. So after a brief duration of channeling, Senna turns camouflaged, and any allied champions in this will also be camouflaged. You can still be seen by control wards, hence the camouflage, but any allies, including yourself, inside this gain bonus movement speed. Also, enemies, if you're coming through here, all the enemy is going to see in this situation, unless you do an auto attack or you do an ability, will basically be this black mist circle. This is all they will see, even if there are allied champions inside. So you can be really crafty with this. Like in the mid game, you can come out of a brush with some allied champions in. If they don't have vision, they might think, oh, it's just only Senna, but then it pops out 4 of your teammates, and you can make some really nice plays that way. But that does require a lot of team coordination. The majority of time in lane, you're going to be using this as an escape tool, or potentially as an engage tool, as it does give you bonus movement speed. It's just a fun, nice little ability to use, and this is the ability you're using. You're leveling up last. So Q max, into W, into E. Relatively simple. Now finally, Senna's ultimate is global. So we can give it a little shot here. So if we just aim it like this, it travels across the entirety of the map. And there are two components to this. So the line in the middle is damage, and the entirety of the rest of the ultimate is shield, so including the middle. So it's a bit like Senna's Q, but mega enhanced. So the only way you can deal damage to someone is this if you hit them with this middle portion, which we can show off here. And if you miss, you won't do damage, but you'll still be shielding your allies. So the travel time on this is much faster than like an Ashe arrow. So from bot lane to top lane, doesn't take too long, and you can occasionally get snipe picks. It's faster than like an Ezra ulti as well, and faster than a Jinx ulti as well. It might actually be the fastest like projectile global ulti in the game. Now, because it is a projectile, it can get blocked by Braum shield, Samira wind wall, Yasuo wind wall. Are there ever any wind walls? Can't remember, but those are the main ones that you need to be thinking about. It can be possible in the middle of a team fight if you choose to ulti that only people will get shielded up until the wind wall, because that's when it gets blocked. So just be very careful about that. But since we're on the topic of wind walls, Senna's auto attacks are actually lasers. So laser attacks in League of Legends do not get blocked by wind wall. So even though Yasuo can block her ultimate, he can't block the Q. For some reason, this is counted as a laser as well. And he can't block the auto attack. So that's something you don't have to necessarily worry about. You can get some extra auto attacks if Samira or Yasuo have their wind walls up, and allows you just to hit them. They hate it. So the biggest tip during laning phase, as we were mentioning, like picking up souls is obviously the most important thing we want to do. Wanting to harass easy targets that are out of position with 2 instances of damage, and then generally just backing off after that, because Senna is pretty squishy and she is vulnerable to dying in that circumstance. So just lots of hit and runs. Don't forget, in bot lane you've got 2 champions to hit, so maybe you can maneuver around to hit the other one, but don't overextend too far to do that. If for some reason you are doing random W for throwing out projectiles, which I would not recommend, but if you do happen to land on one, you can then, imagine this ward was a minion. After landing that, you can then do your Q over the minion, and that gives you an easy soul. I mean, there are some cases where you might want to throw out your W projectile if it looks like someone's like looking to come in to like push into you maybe. But generally in lane, you want to avoid randomly throwing out those Ws. Also, once you have your ultimate, have a quick look around these other lanes to see if you can maybe do an ult snipe. It's kind of like playing Soraka. If you're used to her, you're keeping an eye on your allies' health and engaging whether or not, you need to give them the extra shield or not to help survive. Whether it's a gank or just fighting 1v1. But ideally, if you have it for the bot lane, it's much nicer for your own personal usage, because you might need that to help secure a kill, or even just keep yourselves alive in that 2v2 trade. I think there's all kind of tricks and tips that I feel like I can pass on to you. The biggest thing that will feel really nice once you really get it down is just doing your ward and then queuing. The best way about that is making sure that your trinket is on smartcast, because if it's not, then you're fiddling around placing it, and then it just takes too long, and then it's like it ends up being a lot slower doing it like that. So make sure this little arrow here is highlighted on your trinket, and then every time where your cursor is, you can just instantly pop down that ward, and it just becomes a lot more fluid. I'm going to move over to the item section now, which is once again kind of, there's a lot of unique things going on here. If you played Pike, you might be familiar with some of the lethality items, but otherwise, I'll do my best to explain everything. Right, let me just sell these cookies that we have from our runes. So the key build here is speed, poking and harassing, and lethality. Senna has a lot of tools as well going into utility items as well if needed, whether a game's going really bad or your team needs some armor reduction on the enemy team, so they got a lot of tanks. Senna has a lot of options into helping her team. So starting off the laning phase, starting off with the Spectral Sickle, it's basically Spell Thieves but an AD equivalent. So if you don't know how Spell Thieves works, you just auto attack or land abilities on champions to generate the gold. Spectral Sickle is exactly the same, just with AD stats. Now generally, I would highly recommend you opting into Boots of Swiftness as quickly as possible. Senna is extremely vulnerable, but she has a lot of movement speed things in her kit. Movement speed is really, really nice on Senna to help her get in and get out. Boots of Swiftness are pretty cheap and very convenient to buy, so Boots of Swiftness for me is the absolute perfect choice. You might want to choose Boots of Lucidity if you are feeling like you don't necessarily need the movement speed. Extra cooldowns are also really nice, but Boots of Swiftness, if you're like, just take it. And now we have some item contenders, because now once you have these boots, you got your speed in. Now we want to do some damage. So our options are Kraken Slayer, Eclipse, and Divine Sunderer. Ironically, all three items on her are viable. My personal choice of favorite is Eclipse. There are two reasons for this. It is the cheapest item to buy by either 200 or 300 gold. B, it scales really nicely with her kit and it gives her a little shield, which is awesome, and also works really nice with your passive, because if you hit an enemy champion twice, you deal bonus magic health damage to them, you get movement speed, and you get a little shield. So it works pretty much exactly like your passive, and you don't need to think about it. So just, all in all, it's like my absolute favorite item. If you are going up against tanks, you have two options. You've got either the Divine Sunderer or you have the Kraken Slayer. Now, from statistics on pro plays and from what I've been seeing, Kraken Slayer is the optimal option against very tanky or high health teams. Otherwise, you can opt into a Divine Sunderer if you feel like you want the extra ability haste primarily. It just seems to be the best choice for anti-tank mainly because of the true damage. But for 90% of your games, you're probably going to be taking an Eclipse, and if you're not sure, just take Eclipse. So now we're entering into very utility kind of items here. One thing I should add is that like these items, like this Eclipse, is much more expensive than some of the enchanter items in particular. Like Moonstone is 2,500, so Eclipse costs 600 more still than an enchanter item. But when you do pick up those souls off the ground when playing Senna, you are generating gold when doing that, so it helps make up that little bit of gold difference basically in the shop window. So you have a lot of utility options here. If you feel like you are going up against a couple of enemy team champions where they're stacking a lot of armor, Black Cleaver is actually a really, really nice item. You can get those stacks on super quickly, and I would highly recommend that if you're up against tanky teams. If you're up against assassins, you've got potentially either like an Edge of Night if they have a spell that you need to block, or you might be moving into a Guardian's Angel just to stay alive against those assassins. Those are like your two main options, whether or not you need the spell shield or if you want the revive. Ideally though, the ideal is getting Umbral Glaive. Now Umbral Glaive is an insanely, once you try this as a support main, it is very hard to both love it and hate it at the same time. So for guide purposes, we're going to be taking a second item. So Umbral Glaive, if you're unaware, basically allows you to one-shot the stealth wards. So it does 3 damage to wards, basically. It also does 3 damage to traps, so any traps, so if you're up against like a Nidalee, Jhin, Teemo, those kind of champions, you will also one-shot those with an auto attack. If you're trying to kill a control ward, it takes 2 hits. And also, don't forget your Q, it does on hit, so that will also, you can use your Q basically to hit wards, and your Q will also do triple damage to wards. So if you want to kill wards quickly and safely, you can sometimes just snipe them away, just using your max Q range if needed. Another good thing about this as well, it basically gives you like another Oracle's Lens. The cooldown is really short, 45 seconds, but allows you to spot any enemy wards nearby, and that lasts 8 seconds. So it lasts a really nice chunk of time, gives you time to have a little walk around and try and find these wards. And also another really good thing is that once it does, like a little purple eye will pop above your head, indicating that Oracles is active and that there's a ward nearby. So you can never really get caught out when this item is ready. You can keep walking into areas knowing that they can't see you, because otherwise the Umbral Glaive would be popping off, if that makes sense. So it's really nice item to annoy the enemy support. It gives you a lot of map and vision control. Once you're entering into 2 items on Senna, the game is looking like it's probably going to end. So once again, you're going to be looking at utility item. Senna does, because the items on her, as long as you're taking either lethality or just generic utility, such as the Black Cleaver or even Grievous Wounds, like if you are going up against a Soraka in lane or a Yuumi, going into Executioner's Calling, I personally prefer Chempunk Sword because it has ability haste on. As your option into Grievous Wounds is also really good. Like you could end up in a full utility game where you have, you got your Eclipse item, your Mythic, but you've also got Grievous Wounds anti-heal for the enemy team, and then you're going into anti-tank. So the enemy team can't heal and they can't tank against your physical damage on your team. So that's particularly like super nice. If you are going up against enemy tanks, though, do note, if you are going up against enemy tanks that are building a lot of armor, and you have a team composition full of ability power, do not bother going Black Cleaver, just go something greedy for yourself, like a Last Whisper. I would probably recommend the Lord Dominique's. So, you can see like how she has a lot of AD variants in her build, and you have a lot of item options. So having some generalization of and knowledge of AD items is really nice on her. If you don't have that kind of knowledge because you're playing support a lot, so you're only really used to like the enchanter / AP / tank items, this is like a whole range of items that you probably never even looked at. So it can be a little bit daunting, but the items that I've highlighted are the main ones that you want to look at for Senna. Some people also opt into a rapid fire cannon. I don't really particularly like that. I feel like she has enough range on her passive as it is, and I would rather have the utility items, but you can do that if you wish. Another argument as well is for the Infinity Edge as well, because you are naturally taking crit because of the soul pickups. It's generally not too hard to get that 60% crit chance requirement to get the passive on the Infinity Edge active, because if you just pick up the Infinity Edge, that gives you 20%, which means you need 80 souls without any crit items on yourself to activate Infinity Edge. And it can be a nice DPS booster for sure. Like if you feel like you just want to do all the damage, you want to be like what it feels like to be an AD carry, sure, you can do Infinity Edge, but there are 2 big negatives to this. You could be buying utility for your team, and the utility is a lot cheaper. I mean, that's the second one. It's just, Infinity Edge is just very expensive. Everything I mentioned, like Umbral Glaive, for example, is 1,000 gold cheaper. The Grievous Wounds item is also, the Chem Sword is also 800 gold cheaper. Even Black Cleaver, 300 gold cheaper. So it is extremely expensive to buy, but it's not impossible to do that as Senna, as you will probably end up getting some kills because you are taking DPS items at the end of the day. Senna is probably one of the few champions. Senna and Pike. Wardstone is not a great item on them just because they can utilize the damage items, and there's so much choice into what you can possibly take here. Is that last slot will probably be ended up taking up at least by a Serrated Dirk, as her Q does scale, the heal from that does scale from extra lethality as well as bonus attack damage. And the more lethality you have, generally it's pretty damn good, especially if the enemy team doesn't have bonus armor. So I know it can be a pretty daunting aspect with the item situation, but if for your first few games and you have absolutely no idea what to do, I'm going to give you an absolute basic item build which will generally be okay in your games, like no matter what. So that would be the Boots of Swiftness, Eclipse, Umbral Glaive, and if you need Grievous Wounds, go Chem Sword. If you don't, then you can maybe go Black Cleaver into Anti-Tank. Like, try and lean into one of those and get a feel of the utility of it. So most cases, you're probably going to end up taking the Chem Punk Sword. You might want to take it before Umbral Glaive, potentially, depending on how much healing the enemy team has. Like if they have a Soraka or Yumi in particular, you'll be probably wanting to take the Executioner's Calling earlier on, just so that you got that Grievous Wounds in. And then generally anything in the suggested items can be potentially okay, but do not buy Manamune. I've tested it, I thought it was good, but it just takes a little bit too long to stack up on her. So Manamune I do not recommend on Senna, even if overall the conversion onto Muramana is strong, it just takes a little bit too long to get going. So I do recommend looking into basically, the commonly built items at the bottom here can help you out a lot. Take anything there apart from Tear of the Goddess and Manamune, essentially. Now I think that's everything I wanted to cover. We covered everything from summons to abilities to skill orders. A couple of tips, if I haven't already given enough tips already. Her passive, the main reason why she's played as support and not an AD carry is because if you were to be the one killing the minions, the soul generation would be really bad, and that's because there is a % chance that when a minion dies, that a soul drops. If Senna doesn't kill the minion, it just dies from another champion or by other minions, the drop rate on those souls goes up dramatically. The same with a cannon minion as well. So the cannon minion in lane, as long as you are not the one killing the cannon minion, will always drop a soul if you're nearby. And talking about soul generation as well, it is really nice if you are playing blue side, which is this side of the map we're currently on at the moment. So if you're playing on this kind of like west side of the map, this side as opposed to red side, you have the luxury of Krugs. So if you are coming into lane and you can see your jungler killing these Krugs, always path up, and these Krugs can drop a lot of souls. We're talking about 4. If you're lucky, you can get 5. But the big one will always give you 1 no matter what. And then because of just how Krugs are in nature, if you're unaware, you've got these little there's 3 here, and then they turn into another set of 2. So even me killing them is generating souls, but your jungler killing them will give you even more soul generation. So you can get a lot of souls just by sticking around. Just stick around here, walk past, you can then go into this brush and just pick some up, and then you go back into lane. It's really nice. And also, if you are struggling to find things to do, say you don't have a reason to be like bot lane or even mid, you can just literally just stalk your jungler around, going into the different camps, because you got the KFC camp here. Everyone likes fried chicken, right? Or these are just vegan chickens. These aren't real chickens. These are made of cauliflower or something. So once again, you've got a lot of mobs here to claim souls from and just follow your jungler around. This side of the map is really, really nice. If you're playing on the other side of the map, you will have, you know, access to Gromp and Blue Buff Soul, and there's some wolves here, but it's just not as lucrative. It's one of the downsides of playing Senna on red side. Other than that, I don't believe there's anything else I want to add. I do wish you all the best for playing Senna. She is an extremely fun champion, but she is very difficult and daunting to play. Whether or not you understand the AD items or not, the mechanics on the champion can be quite hard at first. But if you do persevere and you play it in the right team compositions where you feel like you need either an auto attack damager, so you've already got an AP bot laner, or maybe you can play it with a poke composition, so you have like some crowd control here with your W. Think of other champions that would benefit from having that rooted, so it could be something basic like a Mystic Shot from an Ezreal. It could be like the Jhin W snipe route that he can do as well, and poke. So she generally works well if you are going to be playing with a physical damage. She generally works better with those poke AD carries, as all she wants to do really in lane is hit and run. But, you know, if you are able in these trades to, you know, dodge a lot of skill shots and stuff, it is possible to overextend a little bit extra, hit the other champion nearby, grab another 2 souls, back off, and then shortly you can easily enter back and, you know, get some more sneaky souls. While I remember, there's one thing I actually forgot to mention in terms of Senna's Q. So let me turn off the cooldowns. I didn't think about it because we had full cooldowns. Senna's Q goes down lower on cooldown every time you auto hit. So it goes 1 second off cooldown every time you auto hit. So also in the laning phase, you might want to, say if you're looking for a trade and you're looking to potentially engage, it can be beneficial to, say you've done your harassment on someone, then here you're like bashing away, auto-attacking some minions, getting your Q cooldown a little bit lower, ready for the next reset, and then you're going back in to auto-hit, and then you're out of there again. Auto-hit some minions, get your Q off cooldown again, and then you're looking to pew-pew. It's quite a big component about the Q I did miss out, so I do apologize not keeping that in the ability section. So I'll probably try and keep timestamps down below for that one. But all the best. I hope you guys enjoy playing Senna. I am making support guides as often as possible. Generally, we're on a 2-week cycle of me doing a new support champion. Every other week is a tier list, so be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel if you want to be up to date with all the support news and how you can climb and what champions you should be playing, whether you're unranked or if you're high plat. I'd say most of my content is kind of targeted towards. All the best, stay safe. And if you do have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comment section down below, or feel free to come to twitch.tv/Bizzleberry and ask away there. All the best.